Depot Devoid!
Depot Devoid. Depot Devoid.
Hey ho, let's go. So where are we? Who are we? What are we doing?
I think that we are a couple of Transformers.
A couple of transmorphers?
GoBots? Are we GoBots?
I am definitely a GoBot. I am Psy-Kill, the leader of the evil GoBots.
Welcome to Depot Devoid. I am Ted Fagan, a goddamn robot of some kind.
And I am Matt Fagan, and I may or may not be a robot of any kind.
Oh, you're at least a flesh and blood robot. There's no denying that.
Does that make me a cyborg, or am I like some sort of meat robot?
Or meat robots.
Wait, am I like a meat construct that was built by a scientist robot in a society of only robots? Perhaps like the society that existed on Cybertron millions of years ago?
It sounds a little too religious for me going down that route.
I'm
just saying that we're
most
biomechanical robots.
Most things can only be improved by increasing the amount of religion involved.
Hell yeah.
Just ask Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, or we could just get right into the religion of the Transformers.
I personally do not follow them religiously, but I am fond of the Transformers. Okay, so let's
wage their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons.
Transformers.
More than meets the eye.
I wish that I could just naturally talk like Soundwave. Okay, let's explain what we're doing here. So here was my idea. I think that most people can generally agree, if they are unfortunate enough to have seen it, that the Michael Bay live action Transformers movie is not the best possible adaptation of the Transformers as a property.
Fuck Michael Bay.
With that as my premise, I feel like the conversation around that movie is often about what a terrible job he did and what he should have done differently to make a better, more satisfying adaptation of the Transformers. And I think, Ted, that what is lost in that conversation is perhaps a more interesting conversation of what Michael Bay could have done differently to make a worse, more upsetting adaptation of the Transformers as a property. And that is the conversation that I would like to get to. But in order to get there, we first have to talk about some other aspects of the Transformers. And I think the only way to do that is to begin at the very beginning with the 3-episode launch of the Transformers animated series from 1984.
And we can get there. We can work our way to that. But remember,
hopefully not with every single episode at a time, but
it's gonna be a big undertaking.
We definitely
doing worse than Michael Bay.
I feel like we could, if we set out to. I mean, I think that's the scary thing, is that Michael Bay probably did not intentionally set out to make the worst Transformers movie he could. That is a frightening thing to contemplate. But I think if we set out with the intention of making the worst possible Transformers movie, then we can maybe find some interesting ideas. But first, we should probably talk about what the Transformers is, what is fundamentally most important about Transformers and what we love about Transformers, because those are the things that we would have to talk about to make a good Transformers movie. So we have to talk about them in order to completely fuck them up beyond all recognition.
That is true. So what are a few opening thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the first thing here's before we even have to talk about the story or what the Transformers is about, I think that everyone immediately knows sort of what the Transformers are and the sound that they make. Everyone knows the Transformers sound. I can't understand you, so I'm just going to pretend this isn't happening. So I think right away, what were some of the other sounds that they auditioned and could have chosen to make the Transformers transformation sound? And I think that is one way that you can just ruin the Transformers right from the beginning.
Squirt noises?
By replacing that with any like an armpit fart or a slide whistle, anything. It's they hit something magic there with that noise. But just imagine how much worse that could have been, and that's an easy starting point for messing with the Transformers.
Like, ooh, also, ow, that's my rotator cuff.
Well, thinking about that discomfort, that's another idea that I had. Do you remember how brutally painful it was to watch David turn into a werewolf in An American Werewolf in London?
I haven't seen that since I was 9 years old.
Because I feel like if transforming from a robot into a car was just absolute mind-fucking agony every single time, that would be like a really different show. Autobots transform and roll out.
Jesus Christ! Without a dream. What? God! Fire! I'm burning up!
That would have traumatized kids even before they see Optimus Prime die.
That's true.
How long has it been since you watched the Transformers? Like how far back are you going here?
The cartoon, not the cartoon movie, of course, but the
no,
cartoon.
We're talking about what we're doing today, the original Transformers.
Yeah, I was probably 14, 15 the last time I saw this one.
Okay.
So 30, well, I'm not that old, Jesus Christ, 25 years.
Do you know how old you are?
I mathed badly for a second.
I think that I probably haven't seen this since like that old video cassette that you guys had. Because I think you had these 3 episodes on a VHS that you had recorded. And I'm sure that I haven't seen it since then. So it's probably been since like early in high school for me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I think I don't have any of my VHS tapes anymore, and I can't remember whether or not I gave that one to Ian to turn into a DVD, specifically because I thought it would be absolutely hilarious to still have the commercials that we recorded off of local television in Coosbag.
I always love those collections that still have the old commercials in them.
Yeah, it's great.
Sometimes they actually release old stuff on VHS or DVD with the old commercials intact, and that is such a blast. But like old stuff, they'll have like old cigarette commercials. Those didn't air during the Transformers, obviously.
You know, some shows I watched, they did.
Probably not in the after school hours.
Yeah, no. During the daytime hours, and when I was little and not in school yet, and watching things, it's like, oh, the cigarettes for mom who stays at home. Okay.
Hey, moms need something to get through that brutal day.
Yeah. Everybody smokes. It's the 80s.
Okay, so Just to set the stage, the way Transformers starts is they're pretty established as characters from the beginning. They all live on Cybertron, where the clearly evil Decepticons and the clearly good Autobots are engaged in a virtually endless war that has depleted Cybertron of energy.
And I love how the narrator just sounds like whiskey and cigarettes. It's great on Cybertron.
Yeah, he's been sitting in that booth recording narration for the last 35 years, just doing nothing but smoking and drinking.
No
He doesn't
breaks.
even know if it's light outside anymore.
So my first little takeaway from this is when they're trying to get the show started and establish some kind of future past bullshit and science, they use the word mega mile.
Oh yes, and astro as a prefix as well. I mean, it's basically as lazy as just using space as a prefix in front of everything.
Yep.
It's sort of similar to the way that the Transformers will often use sort of like vernacular expressions and idiomatic phrases that are apparently familiar to them in their culture, but they're just like stuff that we know, except they've replaced things with mechanical sounding stuff like, oh, that's a kid after my own central processor, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And like some of like that one, okay, that's sort of a one-to-one comparison, but a lot of them just seem weird because it's not like we're constantly referring to the fact that we're made of meat, but the Transformers are really often talking about the fact that they're mechanical.
That's been bothering me in my flesh bones.
Well, I mean, things chill me to my marrow, I guess. But yeah, it's just it seems like that's all they've got is the mechanical stuff. They're not thinking about it a whole lot deeper.
No,
Than
especially
their
in the early
Astros
episodes.
and their Megas.
Yeah. But mostly, I mean, the whole little bit that takes place on Cybertron, there's really not a whole lot that's even particularly interesting.
No. I did think another fun thing that you could do to mess with this version of Transformers is because all of the Transformers that we meet on Cybertron are already in their familiar robot forms, which clearly cannot turn into their Cybertronian alt forms.
Yes.
And it would be kind of fun if they were required to have Cybertronian alt forms that incorporated their actual robot forms. Like I'm thinking particularly of Bumblebee's toes, which are obviously the front of a Volkswagen Beetle, but then he turns into like a little flying saucer. I think that they should have him turn into some Lovecraftian horror that's all grotesque and has icky Volkswagen parts sticking out all over it, like some sort of hideous sea anemone.
That could be fun. There's another way that one could go about ruining the Transformers movie, which would be to just focus on what happened on Cybertron before they leave, and like not even bother with Earth until the end of it when they achieve Earth, because you could look at like the actual history of the Autobots and the Decepticon war, where the Autobots are just workers who are doing their thing, and none of them can turn into weaponry, which is the whole thing that Decepticons can do back in the comic books, is they can control the planet because they can turn into weapons, but Autobots can't, except for the Primes. The Primes can turn into weapons. And
so
if they
does
focused
Optimus
on
just
that,
choose not to?
Optimus was the only one who could do. Well, not him, but his whole line, the Primes. They were the good weaponry Autobots, and the rest of them just could turn into bullshit cars and whatnot.
Huh. Okay.
If we ever end up posting,
I've
this,
never actually
I'm just
read
going to
the
get all
comics.
sorts of emails.
I know that the comics are sort of parallel but quite different from the stories in the cartoons, mostly due to just like simultaneous production and very little communication between the different teams. But yeah, I know that there are a number of differences, but I am not familiar with any of them.
Crazy, gonna blow your fucking mind right here. Megatron, black helmet.
I actually know that because I remember the cover of like issue 2 or 3 of the Marvel Transformers series where he's fighting Spider-Man on the cover and he's got the black helmet on.
Never read that one. I only read a couple of the comics. But
Yeah, they were coming. I think the comics started slightly before the show too.
I believe so.
But yeah, they were developed at the same time, but they did not adhere to all of the same backstory. And then of course, like the character development kind of diverged at that point. And plus you can get away with more in the comics than you can on the TV show at that time. There was less oversight. The kids' cartoons had a lot of in the mid 80s had a lot of like crackdowns about what they could and couldn't show. Transformers got away with quite a lot, but they definitely couldn't get away with as much as the comics could,
or as much as a Michael Bay movie could.
What if the Transformers, all of them, even the Autobots, like were super racist against biological life forms?
Well, I mean, some of them really truly kind of are, but here's the thing. I'm pretty sure that every one of the Michael Bay Transformers movies really just show me that he's a Europhiliac.
I don't know if they really showed me anything other than that he's not particularly interested in Transformers.
Every one of them that I remember, and I haven't watched them all, and I don't know how many of them he directed, but I'm pretty sure that they all feature a giant robot pissing oil on a person.
That could be.
He's a Europhiliac.
And that wouldn't surprise me.
He's a nasty man.
I've definitely seen the first one once, and I definitely saw part of the one where they fought in Chicago. And then I actually started one because it was like on Paramount Plus, and I started it like a couple of weeks ago because it had a dinosaur on the cover, and I was like, ooh, live action Dinobots maybe. I quit at 1 hour and 57 minutes into the movie, and there had been no Dinobots. And I had to pause the movie to take the dog out. And when I paused it, I saw that there was still 48 minutes remaining in the movie. And I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, this is so boring. I've been struggling not to fall asleep, even during epic battles. And you expect me to sit through almost another hour of this? Who is this for? Who wants to sit in that fucking theater for 3 hours not seeing Dinobots? Preposterous.
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of
I have veered into exactly where I didn't want to go, which is just like just hammering criticism on Michael Bay, which is just obvious and boring. So
all right, let's forget about Michael Bay for now and focus on this damn cartoon.
Which I like. I like this damn cartoon.
It's fun. So
I like how like incredibly clear cut the good versus evil dynamic is.
Autobots which
it is so like they are just like straight up like the Decepticons are just ridiculously evil for no reason and like screaming. They're like Ghostface after he's been unmasked at the end of a Scream movie evil, like scenery chewing, just like monologuing. They're so evil. I love it. It's beautiful.
Always the evil laughter.
and I love and Optimus Prime is like everybody's pop. You know, he's just this kindly gentleman.
One shall stand, one shall fall.
But you know he'll kick ass if he has to. He'd rather that there was another solution.
but there is none.
I have always, like, I've never been a huge Transformers fan. Like, I didn't follow it, but I like them as a property and as a toy and as an idea. I always really liked the Transformers, and Starscream was always my absolute favorite character in terms of Transformers on the show. He, as like this screaming, scheming second in command, is such a beautiful character.
I am the leader of the future! You couldn't lead androids to a picnic!
And if you watch, like, I mean, I know you watched the first three here. I kept going and I watched a bunch of them, and I love that basically in every episode, the Decepticons fail in one of two ways. Either they experience a setback and Megatron, being a coward at heart, like, retreats because he doesn't, like, basically if the Autobots stand up to him too hard, he's just like, oh no, let's try again later. But more often it's because Starscream does some dumb thing and completely ruins their plan, either usually because he's directly disobeying an order that Megatron has given him. Sometimes it's part of a personal scheme to seize power, but it's almost always Starscream does some dumb thing that completely undoes the plan. Usually Megatron doesn't even know that that's what happened because he's not in the scene.
Well, Megatron and Starscream probably are completely unaware that, I mean, after they end up getting to Earth, and the little earthquake ends up reviving some and then they work to revive all of the Decepticons. Starscream's such a bitch. That's the only reason why fucking Optimus Prime got reactivated.
Yep, 100%. They crash on Earth. They're all in the same ship at this point. They're dormant for 4 million years. The ship's computer is revived after being jostled in an earthquake. And uses its Teletran 1. Sends out a probe to scan Earth technology and reprogram all the Transformers with new alt forms that blend in, and starts resurrecting the Transformers. The Decepticons go first, and they get all of the Decepticons revived, and they shut it down and leave. And if Starscream had just listened to Megatron and walked the fuck away, that would have been the end of it. The Autobots, they'd still be there, but they'd just be asleep still. And he started a rock slide that jostled the fucking computer again. And Optimus gets brought back to life. He's such a bitch. I love it.
It's great. It's absolutely wonderful. And then here's one other thing that always really irritates and entertains me. When Megatron transforms, he becomes a tiny gun.
Yes.
So he can't even wield himself.
No, he is entirely useless on his own.
Yeah.
I had a couple of thoughts about that. Like, my first thought was, how did he get to be in charge? Because it seems really like he doesn't seem significantly more powerful than everyone else in his robot form. Certainly, it definitely seems weird that the guy who is the smallest in his alt form and does not even have autonomy is somehow in charge. Like, it's weird and mysterious. But I was also thinking that would be another way to completely fuck this show up, is because there's a couple like that. I mean, Soundwave 2 does that whole like that mass transfer thing that does it, like, what is it, mass displacement, I think is what it's called, where like he's able to transform and become a different mass than what he was before into a tiny tape deck. Later Blasters, the same deal with the Autobots.
Yeah.
But what if when Teletran 1 is reviving the teams, like, what if like one of the teams was only those guys? Like, what if all of the Autobots just were like a space heater and a Slurpee machine? Just like weird little things that weren't very helpful, but were a great disguise.
Oh God.
Very useful.
Yep.
Or what if what if they were near the water and like all of the Autobots were boats?
Oh, here's one thing that I don't remember how long it goes on, but early on in the existence of the Transformers, Autobots can fly. But it later turns out that the Autobots can't fly, and the Decepticons are the only ones who can.
Yes, that was a decision that was made fairly early on, but was like took a while to become calcified. You can actually see it kind of happening even in this first story, where Optimus Prime needs a jetpack to pursue the spaceship as the Decepticons are getting away. It's like he can fly, but he has like limited flight capability. Like they're like the Decepticons are way stronger than them at flight, but the Autobots kind of have it a little bit. Right. And it's pretty much dropped like maybe one story after that. It doesn't last very long, and it's not 100% consistent, but generally speaking, yes, Autobots are ground based and Decepticons can fly even in their robot forms, which is weird, but it's a nice way of setting them apart. It is. There was actually an episode later on that I loved because they were pursuing a power source in Africa, and Prime is like, Autobots roll out, and then the next scene they're pulling up in Africa.
They took a ferry, or maybe the bridge.
It was, I mean, I'm sure that they could have come up with an explanation for how that worked, and I'm sure it wasn't really necessary, but it was really lovely. Just like, let's go. Oh, here we are. Welcome to Africa.
All right, so they end up going to a dam and fighting at the dam where Rumble has gone into the water to create a tidal wave in the river.
Yes, because of the tides.
Yeah, so as this tidal wave is raging,
tidal wave.
Yes. As the tidal wave is raging in the river, the Autobots go and fight after Megatron has gone and informed all of the humans at the dam that they must do what he says because he's the leader of the Decepticons and blah, blah, blah. And then the Autobots show up to save the day, as they do. And then the battle between Prime and Megatron on the dam is so freaking funny. It's just pathetic. Everything that they do.
Well, describe it and tell me how you would make it worse.
Well, Prime makes a energy axe out of one of his hands, and Megatron...
I don't think this ever happens again, by the way. I don't remember this coming up again.
No, I believe it happened one other time, which laid down later in Michael Bay's Garbage Machine, where Prime, I think, makes like an energy / metal sword out of a fist or some garbage. But anyway,
wait, are you saying that he forms blazing sword?
Yes, he definitely did. But yeah,
did he activate intercells?
We don't know if their dynatherms are connected, but we'll get to that another time. So yes,
anyway, battle on the dam where their hands turn into accessories that probably come with the toys.
Yeah, and it's just not good. There's a lot of laughing and like, I'm stronger than you. One shall stand, one shall fall. Blah blah blah.
One shall stand, one shall fall.
all the really entertaining, like, you need to have that just to at least get it started. This is the beginning of a series, and we're establishing roles and
Yeah,
dominance
exactly.
characteristics.
Can you
The
imagine being a parent watching this story unfold and realizing that every fucking one of those is a toy?
yeah,
That's another thing we could do. Put their prices on the screen while the characters are talking.
yeah, especially it's like, with this accessory, this much money.
I would love that.
For a limited time now, this much. Woo! Yeah, it's very, very silly. I loved after that when, like, Spike has somehow gone and moved a rock bigger than himself to save what's his butt, the Jeep. And
Is that Hound?
don't think that was Hound.
I have
Maybe
a
it
hard
was.
time remembering the Transformers names if I didn't have the toys.
It's been
Did you have
quite a while.
Transformers toys?
We only had a few. There
What do
were
you remember?
I honestly remember only the toys that I had after the cartoon movie came out. I had Cup and Hot Rod.
Okay.
But oh, no, I did also have Ultra Magnus, which was fun because I don't know if you ever in the cartoon see it, but Ultra Magnus was a solid white Optimus Prime, straight up 100% solid white Optimus Prime, with parts that click onto him to make him the bigger thing, and a helmet that went over his head. It was
Huh.
really, really weird.
Was the base toy the same size as the Optimus Prime toy? Like,
Yeah,
could
but
you
then you
use him
click
as
all.
like the ghost of Optimus Prime?
Yes, 100%. And then everything else was just a little click on add part. It was
Huh.
really, really weird.
Interesting.
And somewhere between that movie coming out and moving to our grandpa's house, it just straight disappeared.
Aw.
Never had that toy again.
I remember I had the Insecticon bombshell. I had Grimlock, the Tyrannosaurus leader of
Yes, he lived in grandpa's attic.
the Dinobots. Yes. I wonder what happened to him. And I had Blitzkrieg, who we definitely haven't met yet. He is a triple changer. Do you remember the triple changers?
No.
He had a robot form, and he also turned into a tank and a fighter jet, which I thought was amazing. If you look up the toy online, it's not that amazing. Like, it's fine. Like, you sort of, like, as an adult, it's a little more obvious that the robot forms just get increasingly weird to accommodate the vehicle forms. But it was a really cool idea. There's another triple changer, I believe, called Astro Train, or it's like some really boring, obvious name because it's literally like
Astro
a
Train is real.
It's a locomotive and a shuttle.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is neat. It seems kind of basic.
Yeah. It is a
But
thing.
this is unapologetically a toy commercial. I mean, it is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's how it was conceived, was as a tie-in to the toys that they were basically importing from Japan and rebranding.
Yeah, the toys were already created and they needed to do something to sell them. And
yes,
so they did this.
The thing is they did a really good job. Like,
Yeah.
there are many examples of completely cynical cartoon commercials in the 80s. But this one was actually, like, they put some thought into it. There is a mythology. There is a certain amount of actual character development. I mean, yes, it is really about selling 26 Transformer toys to the children of America. but they put something into it that actually, like, I mean, it was absorbing. And although the toys are like super cool, like, and really fun to play with, and I would absolutely sit there and transform them over and over again if I had some in front of me right now.
Yeah, they're great.
But there was something more behind it that made it worth their while. I don't think they would have gotten as far as having a theatrical film if it was, for example, cops fighting crime in a future time.
Although cops fighting crime in the future time sounds great, and they could probably.
It's fun. It is.
They might turn into their own
garbage.
car.
It's absolute garbage. I put a few episodes on earlier today while I was working on a sewing project, and literally every episode ends with them like showing you all the characters and their stupid names, like, so that you know which ones you want to buy. Like, it's literally just like, here they are and they call me bulletproof. It's just ridiculous.
That's good.
No subtlety. And I bet they did not have a comic book.
All right. Well, we'll have to be back after this short break where we watch advertisements for giant robot cars.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
Mom, I wanted to get the Dinobots.
Too bad. You don't get one. You get Insecticons.
Damn it, Mom! Give me a fucking Dinobot!
We now return to the Transformers.
Welcome back to Fuck Michael Bay. This bullshit is not acceptable, and he needs to be done away with.
Yeah, because he did not do a bad enough job, Ted, and I think we can do worse.
We can. We will.
Which is not to say that Michael Bay did not do an epically bad job. I just feel like he did not set out with the intention that is necessary.
No. He just didn't know Transformers well enough to fuck it as hard as he honestly could. He clearly had a better understanding.
He was doing.
Well, I mean, he clearly had a better understanding of the Ninja Turtles, and he fucked that as hard as he could.
I do not have any idea what he did with the Ninja Turtles.
Oh, Matt, you just opened up a whole new can of worms.
My familiarity with the Ninja Turtles begins with the original. Well, actually, it begins with the role-playing game. I knew and played the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles role-playing game before I ever experienced any other version of the Ninja Turtles. It went from that to the original Eastman and Laird comics. And then I saw some episodes of the original cartoon, and I saw at least those first two live action movies that came out with the rubber suit costumes.
Go Ninja, go Ninja, go. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go.
Those are fine for what they are. I certainly would rather watch those again than any of the more recent iterations that I've seen clips of. I feel like there's been a bunch, actually. Like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it seems like there's been like 4 feature films in the last 10 years, which seems unlikely, but maybe.
I know that there's at least 3. And all I can tell you is, in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I realize this is tangential and not what we're talking about today, but in the original Ninja Turtles canon, they are slightly shorter than your average human, and they can put clothes on and be passable as people if they got a hat or a hood and a trench coat.
I feel like there was a lot of floppy, wide-brimmed hats and trench coats.
In the Michael Bay bullshit,
they dressed like Carmen Sandiego,
and they're like 9 stories tall now. They're like at least 7.5 fucking feet tall.
If they were 9 stories tall, I would totally watch it.
Yeah, and now I'm thinking about
it's like a bunch of Gameras.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking about that song about George Washington by Jake Neely and his little YouTube fish. George Washington, Washington, 12 stories tall, fucking killing for fun. It's good stuff.
That I've heard that.
It's
I
worth a re-listen every day.
I recognize that actually somehow.
Had a pocket
Okay.
full of horses,
I feel
fucked the
like there's
shit out of
definitely
bears, threw a knife
talking
into
about
heaven
the
and
Ninja
killed them.
Turtles
Yeah.
isn't totally unrelated to the Transformers. I
Well,
feel like
now that it's been tied in, like not even 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, 1 degree of fucking
do you think
Michael
there's
Bay.
going to be like a Michael Bay universe crossover between his awful Transformers and his, I assume, equally awful Ninja Turtles?
If it all becomes a fuck to death pile of burning dog shit and nobody ever has to see or hear about it ever again, then I would hope for that.
Can you imagine how long that movie will be?
One Peter Jackson worth of
Like,
Tolkien.
I feel, generally speaking, sequels in franchises that are waning tend to get shorter. But that one that I started on Paramount Plus or whatever I was watching, the one that I thought was going to have Dinobots, and which according to the internet does have Dinobots. I didn't see them. That movie is like, that's like the 7th Transformers movie he's made, and it's almost 3 hours long. They should be 89 minutes by now. At this point in the franchise, they should be 89 minutes.
Just imagine what ends up on the cutting room floor.
I
Not that it's actual real film anymore.
Is there anything? Did he shoot anything that he didn't use? He certainly didn't cut any subplots.
All right, moving forward. Spike, down underwater, moves the giant rock that he should not have been able to move. The Autobot clearly would have been able to move easier. Here, little meat sack, you saved my bacon. He
loosened it for him.
Yeah, open that jar of pickles for me. But anyway, they get back up, and whichever Autobot it is like got him bent over a rock and is squishing his little meat sack and says, "Spike, you almost flooded your engine." It's a cool CPR rock. Good job. That's not the way it works.
Flooded his engine.
He was working on it. Now and then
I wonder what their half human, half transformer baby's gonna look like.
Oh, just watch Michael Bay's Transformers 2. You'll find out. It's nasty. It's got like a 7-foot long tongue. But yeah, the next thing I got moving forward from here is the Decepticons decide that they need to go to Burma to a bunch of mines or some bullshit. Tell me, Matt, why is there so much power in rubies? Is this a bunch of hippie bullshit? Does hippie bullshit power Transformers?
I mean, I think the short answer is because this is essentially comic book nonsense. But I think this is just a trope of 1980s cartoons. Gems are magical. There exists many forms of rare metals that have various super properties. These are just things that happen on shows like the Transformers. And because the Transformers has set itself up where like the entire storyline is seeking new forms of energy so they can send it back to Cybertron, it's just going to get more and more ridiculous.
Yeah.
You'll at some point even find out how little potential energy exists within human minds. They can't fill much of an energon cube at all.
Well, I mean, have you tried to squish enough people into one yet?
I mean, I think you have to put a bunch of them in there, obviously. That's what, it's one of my favorite bits of sci-fi nonsense, the Energon cube. I love those. I think it is a great gimmick. And it's a great little bit of simple, effective animation. I think they're fantastic. I love the little humming sound of the energy. I love how they fill the Energon cube with like just like straight oil, and then compress it, and it turns into like that shimmery Energon animation. It's beautiful.
I love how they do squish them down and 4 becomes a nugget and you're good to go.
It's
now.
awesome. I also think that it would be fun to explore how Spike and his teenage friends discover a way to abuse Energon like a drug.
I mean, we all know that they're boofing that shit.
I think we should see it. I think we should see Spike trying to smoke Energon, trying to shoot Energon, maybe just like straight up put like smearing it on his gums.
And wouldn't it also be really good if he ends up getting caught by one of the other ones one of the Transformers who comes down and he's like, "Oh, Spike, that's not how you do it. Let me show you what you really do with that shit." I remember when I was just a sprocket about your side.
What if the Transformers only befriended the humans because, based on their names, Spike and Sparkplug, they thought they were robots?
They're meat robots just like us.
Because the next one that they add later on in the series is named Chip.
Oh, damn.
Seriously.
And then they bring in Shia LaBeouf?
No, they don't. Michael Bay does. Don't go saddling G1 with
They
Shia
bring
LaBeouf.
in a cowboy?
Actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf.
He is an actual cannibal. That's the only thing I appreciate about him.
But yeah, basically this whole thing is just, it's a series of them chasing different energy sources, which establishes the main format of this series, at least up until the movie. I don't know how things, I know I saw episodes of Transformers after the movie happens, but I do not really remember them.
I really enjoy.
It seemed like it got really chaotic.
It definitely does. I don't remember a whole lot of the show after the cartoon film came out, but up until then, it was quite entertaining and actually did develop a good lore and good stories. But in the beginning, it's actually really relatively straightforward and simplistic, but fun. I love how in most shows like this, you have the good guys beating the bad guys. However, in the 1980s, much like in G.I. Joe, where you can't lose any of the toys that you're selling, both of the sides are stormtroopers. Not one of them can hit a fucking person at all. It's almost cute how bad of shots they are. It's like, oh, we're technologically advanced stormtroopers. Oh, hey, my targeting computer's off, which does actually come up a couple of times.
Well, they also, I mean, they are selling this to kids, and they can't show them like dying, particularly G.I. Joe, because they're all human beings. With Transformers, you could probably have gotten away with a bit more. We'll get into the details of that, especially when we get to the animated movie, because obviously there's some dying that goes on there.
Serpentor wasn't really human. Wasn't he a god?
I will take your word for that.
I didn't really watch G.I. Joe religiously, but
I didn't either. I remember that the characters are, for the most part, people.
You had one that was great because when you were at school, I would steal it out of the closet and bring it outside because he would color change in the sun.
Oh yeah, that's Zartan.
Zartan,
I didn't watch GI Joe particularly or care about it. I literally only got that toy because I wanted to do the color change in the sun.
And I hated the show, but other people would watch it, and I was the youngest, so usually I didn't get to make the decisions.
Was Ian because one of you watched the movie over and over again. There was sort of like the Transformer. There was a GI Joe the movie, which was essentially felt like a 3-act, like 3 episodes kind of put together.
Did that involve a blob that they would throw apples into to kill it because apple seeds involved or contain a small amount of arsenic?
I do not know. Here's what I remember. The series of 3 undertakings were to get the parts of something they were putting together, some sort of MacGuffin. One of those parts is like a laser core. There was also some sort of special heavy water that they needed to do. There's a whole scene that takes place underwater where they're fighting these giant fucking tube worms. And the Joes and the Cobras have to team up to fight them.
I think what it was you had the Zartan toy. And so one of us, being your younger brother, decided that meant that it was cool. And so we had to know about it. And I don't remember which one was committing that sin. But
well, one of you watched that movie a bunch of times because pieces of it have been embedded in my head for 30 odd years, mostly from the tube worm scene for some reason. I don't know why.
My favorite thing about GI Joe is you can get onto YouTube and you can watch their public service announcements that somebody else has redubbed. Like there's a couple of kids hanging out, and one of them's like, "Hey, you're not cooking, right?" And the other one's like, "Oh yeah, dude," and starts up the burner, and then the burner lights a fucking curtain on fire, and some GI Joe comes running in and shouts, "Pork chop sandwiches!" and runs in there, and everything's on fire. He's like, "Oh shit, get the fuck out of here, you stupid goddamn idiot, get the fuck out of here, we're all gonna die." And then the next scene you see, they're all outside, and it's like, "Oh, you came in and you saved us, and it's so good." It's, God damn, did that smell good.
See, that explains something that I didn't understand, which is I was shopping on Etsy for like interesting embroidered patches for my jacket, and I found someone who was selling a big embroidered patch that is in the font and background of the GI Joe cartoon logo, and it just says pork chop sandwiches.
Detector, that was the one. Yeah, no, I mean, pork chop sandwiches,
which was lovely. Right. Like, and it, like, even without understanding, I was like, "Oh, that's like, that amuses me." I don't know what it is, but
I couldn't stop laughing when I saw that. I mean, it's fantastic. There's another one where there's like the kid, they're playing hide and seek, and there's one kid who hides in an old refrigerator, the kind that you can't open from the inside and has an actual latch, and they go and they find him, but they
all
play
kids
that.
Should try that.
Yeah, they play it in reverse, where it's like, "Oh, you're the ringleader. Get in here, you."
Nice. I always did like those. It's, the knowing is half the battle. Those were the Super Friends did those too. Like, they did those like in the GI Joe ones were always like commercial tags, and the Super Friends did those as well. Most of them were like even dumber than the GI Joe ones.
Yeah.
They're like, "Don't try to jump your bike over a huge ravine." Like, okay.
Clearly, not a good idea. Yeah.
I love 80s cartoons.
Some
They
of them are truly fantastic.
they they're interesting because they were under such weird, strict rules. That they some of the cartoons just got really dumb as a result. There's so much stuff that they couldn't do. One of the reasons the Super Friends is the way it is because they could never really, like, they couldn't even threaten to kill each other, which is why they would always have such ludicrous dialogue, because they couldn't actually say, like, I'm gonna kill you. They'd be like, twill be your doom, because you could get away with saying that. You couldn't make, like, direct threats of violence and harm, which is a weird thing for superheroes and supervillains.
It is. It really is.
But
It's a strange time.
The Transformers, I think, while no one ever actually has consequences until the movie, I don't think, it still manages to get some decent action, and it's sort of like, it's weirdly inventive, and it's got, like, it's trying to like, it's not actually anime, it's not like a Japanese production, but it is trying to mimic that style, in a way that, like, most, like, American cartoons hadn't really tried doing that yet. So I think for a lot of people, it was a really different look. And it still, it holds up. We were talking about earlier about the hand-drawn animation, and it's got this very, it's got some flaws. I think a part of that is because it was an attempt to mimic a Japanese style, by people who were not accustomed to that. But I like the result. It's got this really, it's very charming.
It's nice. It's like watching Megatron lose his gun and then they're fighting and then it shows back up because some other team was working on that cell and they didn't know, and then it
Right.
disappears back again. It's really nice. I love the care that everyone puts into it, because I mean, there's a great amount of care and effort by the teams that are working on it, but there's not a lot of oversight, especially early on.
Yeah. Yes.
It's you're dealing with a limited amount of people working on a very big project that requires a lot of hands-on work.
It should have been more coordinated in the different media, for sure.
Yeah, and in the future, I recall it gets better, but it's been a while. And
I mean, I don't know if they had ever, I mean, an American production like that. I mean, had anyone tried something like this before, where they were like, they were doing the toys and the comics and the show were all sort of conceived at the same time and intended to be rolled out of this sort of multi-pronged attack on the youth of America?
I don't think so.
I don't either. This was like it was kind of a big deal, and it was really effective. And honestly, I don't think people really even minded the big discrepancies. I never heard anyone, like, complaining much about it.
No, and really, this is the beginning. It's the first 3 episodes on something that hasn't had time to develop what it is going to be. And as they're working through it, like again, like Prime does need to take a rocket pack to actually be able to overtake them, which is a failure before Mirage saves the day and the ocean story begins, as they try and pretend that they actually had beaten the Decepticons, which was an obvious farce. But
Well, I mean, there was always a chance that the show would get axed right away, and if nobody watched it, so they had to give it sort of a wrap up just in case. They do the same thing at the end of the first season. They make it so that if that happened to be the last episode, it felt like an end. But it was, it was bigger than anybody expected.
and
I think, and in terms, go ahead.
I was going to say, here's my biggest takeaway from it. At the end of the episode, they're playing the Transformers theme song, slowed down. Transformers, more than meets the eye. And you know you know how they're playing the music? Violins. I fucking love violins. I was like 3 years old watching this. I wonder if that's where I gained my love for violin music. And if it is, that's really a hilarious bit of life. Why?
That could easily happen.
That could be it.
America, fuck yeah.
I'm gonna get
To save the
motherfucking
motherfucking
day,
yeah. So in terms of going forward to the next stage of our attack on Transformers and our attempts to ruin it, I think that we needed to visit this because we need to start to define for ourselves what Transformers is, in order to figure out what we need to do to ruin it. And so are we going to go from this? Are we going to go to the animated movie? Is that our next step?
Yes, it is. And before we get too much further, I do have to ask, even though this is a non-standard set that we're doing here, what are the first 3 episodes actually about? And this is going to actually be very important in defining how we approach the Transformers.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's really where I was going with this too, and I'm not sure yet what my answer is going to be, but I think we need to just sort of establish what is Transformers to us, and that's sort of part of that same question is what is this really about? And I think Transformers, this setup, this like introduction to the series, I think that most properties of this time are doing the same thing that Transformers is doing, which is setting up a very, very clear good versus evil dichotomy. And so what do we have here? We have 2 races who are both trying to save their own world. But one of them wants to save it so that they can rule it. And the other one wants to save it because it's their homeland and they want it to be safe and for everyone to be happy. And then they come and crash on Earth, and the Autobots are consistently willing to lose individual battles in order to save innocent lives. So I guess what this is about is showing the differences between the Autobots and the Decepticons, because we're teaching our viewers who these different groups are. So this episode it's about good versus evil, which is what every fucking cartoon in the 1980s was about. But it's really, I guess it's about understanding our motivations, which for the Autobots is always altruistic, and that's why we love them, Ted.
You're thinking too hard, Matt. You're going to be really upset when I explain what this is actually about. These first 3 episodes, it's about giant fucking robots. It's about giant fucking robots. That's it. And that's what Michael Bay took away from it too.
Well,
he also
if you really want to talk about what it's about selling toys, but yes. I'm trying to be less cynical and more engaged than that.
Michael Bay even took away one thing from this that I didn't realize until I rewatched it, which is the Autobots, yes, they do want to help humans, but they also don't really care too hard about putting people in danger's way. They'll allow it. They'll allow it knowing that it's not safe for them. They will put them in danger's way. They want them to live. Unlike the Decepticons who are like, squish, I don't care. Which unfortunately They're even apparently fucking stormtroopers when it comes to stepping on meat sacks. But seriously, it's about giant
that probably
robots.
gets a little more refined as it goes on, and in terms of
Yeah.
Prime's willingness to endanger human beings.
But yeah, giant robots that turn into
I mean, Michael Bay did take
vehicles
away the
primarily.
idea of he did take away giant fucking robots. I don't think he took away the idea of Transformers, though, is the problem. He
No,
just
he
remembered
very
the
much
giant
didn't get it.
robots.
He did not understand anything about any of it that was necessary. It's like a half a script came across his desk and he's like, oh, I can special effects it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, okay, so what I want to see if I'm watching Transformers, I want to see robots, first of all, that look like the Transformers. I realize that this is what everyone says, but yes, that's these designs are paramount to some extent. I also I want to see energon cubes. That's important to me as a viewer.
Absolutely.
I have no recollection of whether or not there are energon cubes in the Michael Bay movie. Don't tell me if you remember. I don't remember anything about that plot. But I want to hear the theme. I want to hear the sound that Transformers make when they transform, which, if I'm honest, should probably be the sound that they make in the cartoon and not
Jesus Christ!
Without a dream.
What? God!
although it would be fun.
One thing that
I want to
was
hear Optimus
really-
Prime's voice. I want
Yeah.
that soothing baritone of Optimus Prime. And I want them to be at each other's face to face, yelling and posturing. But mostly I want Starscream, like a slithering worm tongue, wheedling for power. I feel like that's really important. Again, I have no memory of what happens in the Michael Bay movie. I feel like Starscream's probably in it. I'm sure I'm going to hate every second of it when we get there. But those are the things that I want. So in order to ruin them, we have to ruin those things. What do we need to ruin for you?
Here's part of the stuff that's already a problem is they ruined the ability to transform toys intelligently. They ruined the I transform into something that looks like something from Earth. They ruined the ability when it transforms into the shape for it to maintain that shape. Toys, like, they just become wobbly, almost liquid garbage crap of plastic that does not maintain the shape that it's supposed to become. And they've
Ooh,
done
Jello Transformers.
Yeah, I mean, if they made it wet, it would be worse. But I mean, they fucked up really hard. They fucked up really, really hard. They don't have the theme song right. The transforming noise is okay. A lot of the time, if I remember right, in the Michael Bay thing, like Optimus doesn't have his like muzzle cover up. It just like comes up when it comes to like fighting or something.
I have a vague recollection that they have like gross moving face parts that I don't want to see at all.
They made too many moving parts, which is why the toys were, again, more overpriced and don't hold their shape when you transform them.
Yeah, I'm sure that they don't work at all. And I never want to play with them.
They're not fun.
But
so when you have your like 4-year-old being like, Dad, can you transform this? And you're like, where's the fucking instructions, kid?
Yeah, I definitely want, from a Transformers movie, I want transformable toys.
Yeah.
I want to see on screen, like in the cartoon, like it's obviously not a 1-to-1, but on a lot of them they're pretty close, where it's like you see on screen that the robot can turn into the vehicle and it makes more or less some sense. and I want to see that in the movies as well. And I think that Michael Bay did successfully figure out how to wreck that. But I think that maybe besides thinking about what we love about Transformers and how we need to ruin those things, we should think about those things that Michael Bay successfully ruined and figure out how we could make those even worse. Because I mean, he got a good start, but like, I mean, he did those without even trying. And if we put some effort in, then I'm sure that we can escalate that, right?
Oh, we can escalate. It's easy to take a problem and make it worse.
Well, I definitely am looking forward to getting it. I'm not looking forward to having to watch the movie, but I am looking forward to the ultimate result.
This is a dumpster fire, and it's easy to find some gas.
It's oh yeah. But up next will be the 1986 Transformers the movie,
the greatest movie of all time,
which is gonna be it's gonna be fun. It's been a long time since I've actually sat and watched this. I used to put it on at the store sometimes because it's a fun one in the background. And everybody has fond memories of it, so people would coming in shopping would be like, oh, Transformers the movie. Everyone loves Transformers the movie, so everyone says, oh my god, I love this movie. But I haven't actually like sat and watched it in quite a while. It's gonna be a good run.
2 times. It's every time.
I think that that's one of the, I was talking to Bill about this, that like the Transformers movie is probably for kids of a certain age, it's like the first time that they really experience and have seen like an on-screen death of a character that they love. You know, that's not something that comes up in a whole lot of kids movies, and certainly like wasn't something that they were expecting. And it's not just Prime either. I mean, just in terms of this show, I mean, there's a fuck ton of character deaths in that movie.
Oh, yeah. And it was one of, if not the first time I went and watched a movie in the theater.
Yeah, so I mean, you were like 4 when that fucking movie came out. So yeah. It'll be fun to get to that. So is there anything that you want to say, like going into that, like before we watch it, anything that we want to pay close attention to, or
the butt rock theme songs, so good. They even took the Transformers theme and redid it. Butt rock Transformers.
I kind of remember that too. Yeah, awesome.
They did everything right with this one. Even including,
I'm going to try to cram in as many episodes of Transformers as I can, but I'm not going to be. It's because that movie came out after season 2, and season 2 is 10 million episodes long. So I'm not going to. They went from the first season was like a regular, like a weekly TV show. Season 2 was like 4 times a week.
Here's one thing that I'm going to put out there, that if you're going to be watching a bunch of Transformers, watch beyond the movie. Ian told me that Optimus Prime gets brought back from the dead.
I know that he does. Yes,
I don't know anything about that.
He will. Yes, I know he comes back. I know nothing about how it happens or why, but yes, that does.
He's
occur.
Apparently not like fully in control of himself ever. I know nothing about.
Was it like when
Superman
comes back after Death of Superman? Well, anyway, I guess
we've got a lot of territory to cover.
All right. Okay, it looks like we are running out of time, so I guess we're in a good spot to begin our quest to ruin Transformers. I think that my old school love of Transformers has been rekindled now. My heart is wide open, and I am ready. I'm ready to wreck this shit. So Ted, let's ruin Transformers.
let's make Michael Bay feel bad about how badly he did at ruining our childhood, because we can go worse.
He's a puss. We can totally take him.
He can't do this shit to us. We can do worse than he did. He's gonna have to smell our poo.
Who does this bitch think he is?
I love you, Matt.
As Optimus Prime said, who does this bitch think he is? I love you, Ted.
Love you too.
See you next time.
See you next
Roll
time.
out.
Transform and roll out.
Depot Devoid is hosted by Matt Fagan and Ted Fagan. Depot Devoid is not hosted by Ian Fagan because he died and we miss him. Reach us at Depot Devoid Podcast at gmail.com.